The moon does not control the tides. That's not a typo. Read it again. For your entire life, someone told you the moon's job is tides. Pull water in, pull water out, twice a day, forever. Simple. Boring. A cosmic light fixture with a side gig in oceanography. Here's the problem. Tides are the least interesting thing the moon does. The actual job is bigger, stranger, and if you take it away, you don't get a slightly different Earth. You get a planet where nothing like you was ever going to happen. Let's start at the beginning, because the beginning is violent. 4.5 billion years ago, Earth was young, molten, and alone. Then something the size of Mars, a planet scientists now call Theia, came in at an angle and hit us. Not a graze, a collision. Picture this, not an asteroid strike, not a meteor, an entire planet slamming into another planet. The energy released was enough to melt rock into vapor. Chunks of Earth's outer layers were thrown into orbit, glowing, spinning, mixing with debris from Theia itself. Within maybe a century, which is nothing, a blink, less time than a family tree, that debris pulled itself together into a sphere. That sphere is hanging above your house tonight. You are looking at the scar tissue of a planetary collision every single time you look up. Now here's where it gets strange. That newborn moon wasn't where it is now. It was close, terrifyingly close, somewhere around 15 times nearer to Earth than it is today. Let's make that concrete, because 15 times closer doesn't mean anything until you see it. Today, the moon looks like a coin held at arm's length. Back then, it would have filled a huge part of the sky, a glowing, cratered wall, close enough that you could make out its shadows and ridges with your bare eyes. No telescope required. And because it was close, its gravity grabbed Earth's oceans harder, much harder. Early tides weren't gentle laps at the shore. They were walls of water, hundreds of meters high, crashing across a young coastline over and over every few hours. Because Earth was also spinning faster back then. A day was maybe 6 hours long. Stop. Think about that for a second. A 6-hour day, sunrise, full day, sunset, full night, sunrise again, all before you'd finish a modern workday. That was Earth's rhythm, and the moon set the beat. So already, before life, before oceans calmed, before anything we'd recognize, the moon was reaching down and physically reshaping the planet's surface, its rotation, its rhythm. But that's still not the part that saved us. The part that saved us happened over the next few billion years, quietly, in the background, while nobody was watching, because nobody existed yet to watch. Here's the thing nobody tells you about a spinning planet with no large moon. It wobbles badly. Earth spins on a tilt about 23.5 degrees right now. That tilt is the entire reason we have seasons. Summer, winter, the whole cycle that agriculture, migration, and basically every calendar in human history is built on. But a tilt, left alone, doesn't want to stay put. A spinning planet gets tugged by the sun, by Jupiter, by every other body in the solar system pulling on it at slightly different angles. Left alone, that tilt drifts. Not slowly either. It can swing wildly, chaotically, over spans of just a few million years, which in planetary terms is almost nothing. We don't have to guess what that looks like. We have a planet right next door that shows us Mars has two tiny lopsided moons, Phobos and Deimos, basically captured asteroids, barely large enough to matter gravitationally. And because Mars has nothing big enough to hold its axis steady, its tilt has swung wildly over its history. Scientists estimate it has ranged from about 15 degrees to over 35 degrees, and some models push that range even further, over tens of millions of years. Now imagine that happening to Earth, a planet whose tilt swings from nearly upright to wildly sideways, again and again over millions of years. One era with brutal, punishing seasons, another era with almost none. Ice sheets creeping to the equator, then vanishing entirely, then coming back, not over comfortable, gradual, adjustable timescales, but in chaotic lurches. No stable climate, no reliable seasons, No multi-million year stretch of consistency long enough for something like a mammal, let alone a primate, let alone you, to slowly evolve. This is the part most people never hear. The moon is heavy enough and close enough that its gravity acts like a hand steadying a spinning top. It locks Earth's tilt into a narrow, gentle range, wobbling only about a degree or two over tens of thousands of years, instead of swinging wildly over millions. A hand on a spinning top. That's not a metaphor for poetry, that's the actual physics. The moon's gravitational pull creates a torque on Earth's equatorial bulge, and that torque resists the chaotic tug-of-war from the sun and other planets. It's mechanical, it's measurable, and it's been running non-stop for over 4 billion years. Take the moon away, and you don't just lose moonlight, and the tides you already knew weren't the main event. You lose the stabilizer. You lose the one thing keeping Earth's climate boring enough, predictable enough, for life to take its time. And life needed time, lots of it. Here's where it gets even stranger, because the moon didn't just protect the stage. It may have shoved the first actors onto it. For nearly 2 billion years after Earth formed, life stayed exactly where it started, in the water. Simple, single-celled, content to float. Nothing pushed it to leave. Why would it? The ocean had everything: food, protection, stability. Land, by comparison, was hostile, dry, exposed. No reason to go there. Except the moon kept dragging the ocean up onto the land anyway, twice a day, every day, for millions and millions of years. Picture a shallow pool at the edge of the ocean, cut off at low tide. Trapped inside it, small fish, crustaceans, whatever got caught by the retreating water. For a few hours, that pool is a harsh little world of its own. The water warms up, oxygen levels shift. It might dry out at the edges. Then the tide comes back in, and the pool reconnects to the sea. Then it happens again and again, every single day, for eons. That environment, tide pools, and the vast tidal flats connected to them, puts relentless pressure on anything living at the edge. Animals that could survive brief exposure to air, that could handle drying out a little, that could tolerate a pool warming up under the sun, had an advantage. Generation after generation. That pressure nudged some lineages toward tolerating land, not diving in head first, but edging closer, an hour at a time, a tide at a time. Many researchers studying the transition from sea to land point to tidal zones as one of the most plausible staging grounds for exactly this kind of gradual toughening up. Not a guarantee, not the only path, but a repeated rhythmic shove toward the shore delivered twice a day by a rock 384,000 kilometers away. Let's make that distance mean something too, since a number alone won't land. 384,000 kilometers. If you drove there in a car at highway speed without stopping, it would take you about 6 months, non-stop driving, half a year, just to reach the thing whose gravity was quietly nudging your ancestors out of the water. And it was doing this from far enough away that its pull, while strong, wasn't violent. Strong enough to matter, not strong enough to destroy. That balance is not something you'd expect by default. Too close, and the tides tear a coastline to shreds, nothing stable enough for evolution to work with. Too far, or no moon at all, and the tides are so weak they barely matter, no rhythmic pressure, no repeated staging ground, no daily shove toward land. Earth got a moon in exactly the right range, close enough to matter, far enough not to shred anything. That's not poetic license. That's the actual physical window scientists' model when they talk about tidal forces and habitability. It's narrow, and we're sitting right in the middle of it. So by this point, the moon has done two enormous things. It's been steadying our tilt for 4 billion years, keeping the climate sane enough for complex life to develop slowly, without wild swings wiping the slate clean. And its tides may have been part of what nudged life out of the ocean in the first place. But there's a third thing, and this one is even harder to picture because it's not about the past. It's about what's happening right now, tonight, while you watch this. The moon is leaving, not dramatically, not anytime soon, in a way that affects you, but it is measurably, continuously drifting away from Earth. at a rate of about 3.8 centimeters per year. That's roughly the length of your thumb every year since the Apollo missions. We've been able to measure this directly. Astronauts left mirrors on the lunar surface, and scientists on Earth bounce lasers off them and time exactly how long the light takes to return. That's how precisely we track this, down to millimeters across 250,000 miles. Why is it leaving? Because the tides it creates on Earth aren't a one-way relationship. The moon pulls on our oceans, but that bulge of water doesn't sit still. Earth's own rotation drags it slightly ahead of where the moon actually is. And that dragged bulge of water pulls back on the moon, giving it a tiny boost forward in its orbit. A boost forward means a slightly higher, slightly wider orbit every single year. We are very slowly flinging our own moon away from us. And it's doing the same thing to our rotation in return. Earth's spin is gradually slowing down because of that same tug of war. Days are getting longer, not in a way you'll ever notice in your lifetime. We're talking about roughly 2 milliseconds per century, but it's happening, measured, confirmed, undeniable. So here's the uncomfortable follow-up question. If the moon has been the steady hand holding our climate in place for 4 billion years, what happens as that hand drifts further away? The honest answer is, eventually that stabilizing effect weakens. Not tomorrow, not in 10,000 years. We're talking distant future, the kind of future where the sun itself will already be changing in ways that make the point somewhat moot. Long before the moon's grip becomes too weak to matter, other bigger problems will already be reshaping the solar system. But the mechanism itself is real, and it's a strange thing to sit with. The very stability that allowed you to exist is quietly, patiently unwinding 1 thumb length per year, and has been since before the first human ever looked up and wondered what that thing in the sky actually was. Ancient people didn't know any of this. They didn't know about Theia or tidal locking or laser reflectors on the lunar surface. They just noticed the moon change shape, tracked its rhythm, and built entire calendars, festivals, and myths around its cycle. Farmers planted by it, sailors navigated by it. Entire religious systems set their holiest days by where the moon sat in its monthly cycle. They were, without knowing it, paying attention to the exact mechanism that had made their own existence possible in the first place. That's not a coincidence dressed up as poetry. That's just what happens when a species evolves under the direct influence of something, generation after generation eventually. It notices, it builds a relationship with the thing that shaped it, even without understanding why. Now, here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you a little. We don't know how common a moon like ours actually is. Most moons in the solar system are small, oddly shaped, gravitationally captured leftovers like the 2 lopsided rocks orbiting Mars. Earth's moon is different. It's large relative to its planet, about 1/4 of Earth's diameter, which makes this pairing closer to a double planet system than a planet with a satellite tagging along. Nothing else in the solar system looks quite like it. And the way it formed one specific violent off-angle collision at one specific window in a planet's early life, producing one moon of one particular size, settling into one particular orbit that's not an outcome you'd expect to repeat easily, which means the very thing that stabilized your climate, possibly nudged your ancestors onto land, and has been quietly running as a planetary support system for 4 billion years, might be the product of an accident, a specific, violent, low probability accident that happened to go exactly right. Sit with that for a second. Somewhere in the universe, right now, there may be a planet with liquid water, the right temperature, the right chemistry for life, and no large moon. And on that planet, the axial tilt swings wildly, chaotically every few million years, the way Mars's does. Ice ages arrive out of nowhere, climates flip without warning, and whatever life managed to start there never gets the multi-million year stretch of calm it needs to become something that looks up and wonders. Maybe that's most planets. Maybe stability like ours is the rare exception, not the rule. If that's true, then the moon isn't just a rock that happens to orbit us. It's closer to a precondition, one quiet variable sitting in the sky, without which none of the rest of this, the calm climate, the slow evolution, the tide pools, the crawl onto land. Eventually, you sitting here watching a video about a rock, none of it happens the same way, or maybe doesn't happen at all. So yes, in the scale of the universe, you are small. Earth is a speck, the moon is a smaller speck still, hanging next to it. Neither of you register on any cosmic scale that matters to a galaxy, let alone the universe. But flip that around for a second. Out of everything that had to go right, a specific impact at a specific angle, at a specific moment, producing a moon of a specific size, settling into a specific orbit, holding a tilt steady for 4 billion years, dragging tides across a shoreline for exactly long enough you are. What happened when all of it worked? Not because you were destined to, because the numbers this once lined up. You're not watching the sky from a place life was supposed to end up. You're watching it from the one place, so far as we can tell, where a very quiet, very patient rock did everything right for 4 billion years, so that something would eventually exist to notice. That's not a small thing, that's the whole thing.